Welcome to Compassionate Conversations, where we push the boundaries of comfort to empower you to become all that you dream of being. Today, I will be interviewing Susan Willson, a Yale-educated certified nurse midwife with more than 40 years of experience in the women's health field. She has spent the last 20 years working exclusively with women in the menopausal transition. She is the author of this fabulous book, Making Sense of Menopause, Harnessing the Power and Potency of Your Wisdom Years. She believes that the world needs to see the potency and wisdom of mature women now more than ever. I couldn't agree more. A quick reminder before we begin. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Click the like button, give it a great review if you really enjoy it, and pass episodes on to others who could also benefit from them. So welcome, Susan.
Hi.
And you just told me something about how many years you've been working with women. So please correct what I said.
I've been working with women about 48 years now. I started when I was young at 25, working in a community crisis center women's clinic, and went on to become a midwife and have worked through all stages of the women's lifespan and the
That's
last, 20 years or so in menopause.
amazing. Well, I just for those watching or listening, this is on YouTube and it's also a podcast. This book is what I consider the Bible for menopausal women
Thank you.
or women that are going through the menopausal transition. I recommend it to every client who's going through this, which is in the thousands. I work with a lot of women that are traversing these waters. And I'm so excited to have you on because I've read a lot of books on menopause,
Mm.
and some of them slightly helpful, some really useless, made me angry. But yours just spoke to my heart and my spirit. It
Oh,
was
thank
it
you.
was on a whole different level, and that's why I wanted to bring you on the show to really give a holistic. It's not just a feminist perspective. There's a lot of feminist manifestos out there around menopause, but it's it's spiritual in nature, and it what touched me so much was how it uh, was like a bird's eye view. It was taking the big picture and looking at our lives from that perspective, and that we're on a spiritual journey. So I believe we're all on a karmic journey. We come into this life and we don't know, what's going to happen or why or how, but I believe that we're all sort of following this golden thread. I had a mentor once who told me
Mm.
just keep following the golden thread. And that we have so many interesting, fascinating uh, stories. Every woman is so unique, right? And you really speak to the spiritual aspects and the purpose of suffering. I guess I try to come from a Buddhist perspective, and I felt like you you really tapped into that, the fact that we in Buddhism they say there's 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, and that we have to be mindful of pretty much both all at the same time because they're both ever present. And I felt like you were speaking that language when you talked about the joys and the sorrows of aging, especially.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I think regardless of someone's perspective or their spiritual um, perspective, I think it's important to put menopause in context of the entire um, arc of a woman's life, the biological continuum, because so often we just kind of wake up in the middle of it and don't even really know what's going on, because before we get into menopause, we're not really wanting to think about it. And then the cultural story about that is one of horror usually. So
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
it's really important to understand that this is part of a continuum. We've been through these hormonal transitions before, and while they're challenging, they're certainly doable. You feel a little like you're in the spin cycle when you're in the middle of it, but then you find your feet on the other side and become the next wonderful thing. And the same thing
Mhm.
will be happening with menopause. So I like to remind women, you've done this before. While you did puberty, you may not have really had quite the perspective to put it in context. If you've had children, no way you can miss the fact that you become a different creature and your body's not your own anymore. So to
Mhm.
me, that's very important, is to put it in context, to know that nature gave us the tools and that there's purpose to it,
Yes.
because knowing there's purpose and being able to work with that, I think gives women back a lot of their power.
Yes. So I'm going to read something back to you because I think it's so wonderful from
Hmm.
your book.
Thank you.
So you say there is a cultural belief in the West that menopause is an unavoidable horror. Prepare yourself, dig in, because this is going to be a wild ride. So why is our menopause so hard and why do we fear it so much?
Well, I think largely we're taught to fear it. It wasn't until relatively recently that we've even been having much in the way of open conversations about menopause. It was shrouded in mystery. It was one of those female things that you didn't really talk about. I mean, even in my grandmother's generation, women were sometimes being institutionalized because they were not themselves and they were acting strangely, and people didn't know what to do with them. So even when I first had this book published, which is 2.5 years ago now, there was very little out there. One book had just come out, and there were a couple of articles, and people were asking, where's all the information on menopause? But in my generation, I'm in my early 70s, women were taught to value different things, and our culture really deifies youth. And
Yeah.
so our my generation was often taught to value our physical appearance or value our ability to attract a man or things like that. And so many of the women coming into the menopausal years in the last 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, were coming with that mindset. And
Right. Do you
so
mean
it
like
all
that we're supposed to look the way that we looked when we were 25, when
Well,
we're
that our
60?
value is somehow wrapped up in all of that, in our attractiveness. And our bodies change, our hormonal balance changes, everything changes. And
Mhm.
that is, in that perspective, a huge sense of loss, because
Yes.
as we age, I mean, it's going to happen. So,
Yeah.
to join with it and to see what the gifts of it are is really important. I mean, even now that we're talking more about menopause, 9 out of 10, maybe more, books that are out there that are considered menopause books are really diet and exercise books that tell you, if you just follow my protocol, you won't have to age. So,
Those are
um,
the ones that make me mad, Susan.
yeah, me too. And I
Yeah.
think that, women tend to fear this because they've heard horror stories. If they've heard anything, they kind of wake up in the middle of this thing and go, whoa, what happened? Because a lot of the symptoms that we experience during menopause at any other time of life might be considered symptoms of illness. And so many women are really quite concerned that something's very wrong
Right.
with their body and that it's permanent. And
Mhm.
so, that's another piece. But I think we also educate each other as
Mm.
women, and I think we need to take responsibility for that. I noticed it for years in the birth and pregnancy culture. I mean, when women would tell stories about their birth, it was always the horror stories
Right.
and not the transcendent moment or the power they felt or agency they felt giving birth. And something similar happens with menopause, and we're educating other women with our stories. And I think it's largely because we're still working out our trauma. I mean, the
Oh,
Western medical
point.
system is not women friendly, to put it
Yes.
mildly, and women's needs and what they experience, women's experience, is only just starting to be really looked at and taken into account. So you hear stories all the time about women going into a physician visit with these symptoms that they're really concerned about. Their tests come out normal. And so they're told, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. It's
Right.
in your head. Well, it's not in your head. So,
Right. Right.
I think our experiences, I think the stories we hear, and I think our cultures really tight focus on youth and is I mean, that is what is prized. You have 15-year
Yeah.
olds now um, as our models in magazines and
Mhm.
things like that, kind of dressed up to look older. So there's really not a juicy place for women of a certain age in our culture. And we're starting to
Mhm.
create that, but it's
Yes.
not right up front where we can get to it. And so, I
Mm.
think that has a lot to do with why we fear it. And I think if we can start to tell the new stories,
Mm.
and live as authentic human beings at this
Right.
age, that
Yeah.
we will begin to turn that tide.
Well, you're really speaking my language, Susan, with talking about trauma. And, I'm a psychotherapist, and
Mm,
um, yeah, and it's so important, I think, for us to, of course, heal our own trauma, and to work with, the emotional unfinished business that, and then if you think about, there's ancestral trauma too, for example,
mhm,
people who've ancestors have been through horrible things, and
yes.
all of that. And now we know through epigenetics that trauma is actually passed on in
Mhm.
the body.
On the DNA, yeah.
Amazing. So, yeah, I think that there's many, many levels to unpack here.
Mhm,
Looking at the medical system, um, yeah, and how they work with women's issues, and the medicalization of childbirth, and it's interesting because for menopause, I I kind of I almost don't feel like they've done enough. Like, if you look, because I'm looking for basic things for vaginal dryness, and the symptomology of, now I hit menopause officially February of 2024. So
mhm.
um I
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. Keep saying to my perimenopausal clients, this is what it looks like on the other side.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
fantastic. And, yeah, I just feel like there's actually not a lot of options. I was saying to my doctor, there's, something called the estring, you might have heard of it. It's
mhm,
a suppository. You keep it in the vagina for 3 months, I think, and it s spits out bits of estrogen so that, helps you deal with those symptoms. And it's been out of they haven't been producing it. It's made by Pfizer, and it hasn't been available for almost a year now. And I said to my doctor, I said, think of how many angry vaginas there are out there.
Well, actually, there's some really wonderful, very effective things out there for that. It's just that conventional
Mm.
medicine doctors are not taught that sort
Oh,
of thing. Again, medicine
right.
has not really caught up. So that's an easy quick fix. It's one
Okay.
reason why I really love to do personal consultations with women,
Yes.
because you can let them know all the things that they never are able to find out in their 5-minute doctor visit, and personalize things for them, not only give information, but hear their
Yeah.
stories. And it's so
Yes.
important, if we're going to heal, to tell our stories.
Yes. I'm thinking, Susan, just when you said that, could you give your alternative fix for that problem? Because I'm thinking that many women listening to this will have that problem and would
Mhm.
be very
Right.
happy to
Sure.
hear there's alternatives.
There are three different major kinds of estrogen in the body. There's estradiol, which runs the menstrual cycle, which is the one that helps us, become pregnant. And because its role is mostly reproductive, it triggers a part in the brain that makes you want to make babies and nurture everything inside and be willing to, put everybody else in front of you. I kind of call it the doormat hormone because when we're in the estradiol trance, that's where we're at. We're there to nurture, we're there to create containers for that. And that is a proliferative estrogen. It's the one that, when they talk about having any concerns about imbalance or relationships to uterine or breast cancer, it's not causative, or we'd all have cancer when we were 5 years old. Our levels are very high when we're young, even. So that one is proliferative and it's to do with reproduction. So nature's smart, and in menopause, the levels of the reproductive estrogen come down because we don't need them anymore. The levels of estriol, which is a weaker acting estrogen, rise. And estriol triggers the creative centers in the brain. So that's why you find midlife women wanting to dance that dance, paint that painting, write that book, start that business, whatever it is, because now their creative centers are being triggered. And estriol is a much weaker acting estrogen. I think it's like only about 85%. I mean, estradiol is 85% more, is stronger than the estriol. So
And that
estriol.
sorry, the estriol is from the adrenals, is that right? The
Well,
the
all of
adrenals,
our hormones after the ovaries begin to wind down are made in our adrenals and our fat cells. And our
right.
adrenals have been making hormones all along the way. But in terms of vaginal, it's not really dryness. What it is elasticity. Because as the estrogen levels go down, the elasticity of the vagina goes down. And so when there's penetration and everything becomes thinner, you sometimes have these little micro tears that are what cause pain and itching and things like that. So if you use estriol, the weaker acting estrogen that's not proliferative, you use that in your vagina, it plumps everything back up and makes it elastic again. In fact, it is the estrogen that's highest when we're pregnant, and your vagina has to stretch big enough to get a
Right.
baby out. So,
Wow, yeah.
yeah, so if you just use a little estriol in the vagina, and that can either be done through a compounded cream that is prescribed by a doctor, or there are some naturopathic suppositories that contain it that you can actually buy online. It is a totally safe way of reversing those changes in your vagina, which will mean more comfortable sex. It'll mean less UTI. It'll mean, just a happier vagina altogether. So no more angry vaginas. We don't need to
Thank
have
you
them.
on behalf of many of us, Susan, for that wisdom. We're all gonna
Sure.
run out and find that. Being
Mm.
in Canada, we often can't get things that you guys get in the States,
I'll
but
send you a link.
yeah, 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 and I'll put all this stuff in the show notes, by the way. Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, you talk about menopause as being a crossroads. I found that really interesting. There's a famous old blues song, Crossroads, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and you say that we need to heal what is undone in our lives at this stage to come to wholeness. So, am I right that that might be the emotional unfinished business that women have that sort of comes up, or old traumas? What do you have to say about it?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with several things, and it's one of the first things that I noticed in working with menopausal women as they would come to this doorway of moving through, and they were always looking back over their shoulder at what they'd lost, because again, that's how our culture frames things. So if you're seeing the transition to menopause as one of loss and your life is over and your youth is over and you'll never have what you used to have, it's very difficult to face forward to it with any sense of positivity and purpose. And I really have found that it's a time of life when women either do the work of menopause and move forward and thrive, or they start to slowly diminish and kind of fade away because they can't get out of that mindset. And I think some of it, as you mentioned, is emotional work that's not done, but I think a lot of it is also identity work. I mean, our identities as female begin very, very early in our life, sometimes as early as when we first hear somebody go, "Oh, I hope it's a boy," or "Dang, I wanted a son," or something like that. I mean, when until we're about 6 years of age, our brains are downloading everything as truth because we really don't have the analytic capacity yet in our brain to parse things and to have a sense of where it's coming from. So we take in all these messages about who we are from our parents, from our teachers, from our friends, from our religions, from all of that. And so much of that is really unconscious in terms of where it came from. We figure that's just who we are. So I think it's very helpful to go back and tease out whose voice is it really that told me, I'm too aggressive or I'm stupid or I'm fat or I'm not ever going to be able to really accomplish anything? Whose voice is it? And is it even true? Because it's downloaded in our body as truth. And so I think it can be very helpful. And my book has in every chapter and section many questions of self-inquiry that women can ask of themselves or can investigate with their family or their friends or parents or for the very early stuff, but just sit with really because we know. And again, it's important to tell our stories because often when you hear the words come out of your mouth, you hear them in a very different way than you do with the internal dialogue that's
Mhm.
going all the time.
Wow.
So, if we want to be authentic, and in my mind, we really do, this is the time of life that we're made to shine, to be authentic, and give our gift. Um, in order to become that, we really need to do the work of sifting through what I call the yard sale of life, picking up each, these phases, experiences, identities, whatever it is, and looking at it with a bold eye and looking at it, trying to find the truth. And then we'll decide what is still authentic to us and we want to keep, and we'll figure out what is not and need to find a way to let that go. Easier said than done sometimes, but I think a menopause ritual of some sort, if you feel inclined in that direction, can really help to ground some of that, even if it's as simple as saying, this is something about my life up until now. This is where I feel I stand, and these are the vows I'm making to the second half of my life. This is where I want to put
Mhm.
all this creative energy.
Oh, that just speaks to me so much personally and professionally. And um, yeah, I wish I had known Susan before because it was around 7 years of pure hell. My perimenopause,
Oh, wow.
it was not
Sorry.
fun. I fell into two severe depressions that left me completely not able to function. It was awful. Um, but if I had known um, before all this, if I could have heard someone like you who could tell me this is what could happen. This is what it might look like, and this is the reason why.
Mhm.
Um, you're going to be transformed into a different version of yourself that's going to be amazing. And she's
Yeah.
creative, and she, is passionate, and she's just shining. And you're going to be bold, and you're not going to care so much what other people think. Oh, that would have helped me a lot.
Mhm.
And also a heads up, if you have any trauma from the past, now is the time to work on that,
Mhm.
or put it, I mean, for me, that was my in the end, that's what came out for me, was there was trauma. I didn't realize it was there. Um,
Mhm.
and, now I'm working on that, and it's so beautiful to be on the other side of menopause. Like, i- if I could talk to my perimenopausal self, I would have said, it's okay, hang on. It's gonna get better, but I
Mhm.
just didn't feel that I had enough support culturally,
Yeah.
socially. My husband didn't know what to do, and the medical system really was, the word I use is obtuse,
Mhm.
completely obtuse, and telling me it's all in my head,
Mhm.
or saying you have a depressive, disorder, and then you're labeled as mentally ill. Um, so I think there's a lot of pitfalls we can fall into, and but yeah, just that saying to anyone who's watching or listening to this, that if you're in the perimenopausal stage, hang in there. Really choose your company carefully. That's kind of what I hear you saying, Susan. Is yeah, choose wise elders, right? Wise
Well,
elders.
and I think peers. I think it's really
Yeah.
important to kind of create a menopause posse of other
Oh,
women that are going through this as
mhm,
well, because
yeah.
then you have people you can trust to bounce things off of and normalize a lot of what's happening, and a place to tell your stories. In fact, I've from the very beginning encouraged women to gather 4 or 5 other women that they really trust that are open to doing this work, and go through the book together, and tell their
Great.
stories and their
Yeah,
experiences, and ask those questions and share with each other what you find, because
I
that
love
can be
that.
so useful.
Yeah, well, I love that part of your book, Susan. I just loved it. Every chapter ended with these self-reflective questions, and they were about, your ancestors, and the stories you've been told. And really, that's what I try to do as a therapist, is to question the narrative, that
Mhm,
people
mhm,
are working with at any one
right,
given moment. Like, whose voice is that? Where did that come from?
mhm,
How did you learn that? Is that true? And I often see, therapy as it's like a woman comes into my office, and she's got a big handbag, and she just dumps it in the coffee table between us.
mhm,
And we both sort through everything there. And, is this useful? Do you want to keep this? Do you want to get rid of that? What things do you feel neutral
mhm,
about? That kind of
yeah.
stuff. And I really think there is that kind of, well, you called it a yard sale. I love that. Um, that sifting through, and yeah, it's like this cleansing, I believe, that happens. And any rituals, um yeah, that even, do you know of any rituals that women have used when they're at the crossroads that have been helpful or useful? Can you think of any?
Well, that's a very individual thing. Like I said, it can be as simple as bringing the people in your life a little more up to speed about what your early life was. These were my parents. This was what my life was like. These are where I got some of my ideas about who I was and what the world is like, because every family has its narrative. And then you can say, okay, and this is what I want to dedicate the next part to. Or I've known women that um, had a group there, and they would line up the women who have passed through menopause on one side of the room, and the ones who have not yet on the other, and the woman would make
Mhm.
a ritual transition over to the other side. Or even the sharing among whoever's there of pieces of wisdom that they really gleaned from this time of life, or how they're different, or There was another instance that comes to mind of a woman who was an artist, and she brought a lot of women together over a weekend to work on a ceremonial robe. So
Oh,
everyone was, you had a
yeah.
needle and thread, you had beads, you had various things, and the women decorated this robe that then she used for ceremonial occasions. So I think it
Mhm.
really is as individual as the person
Mhm.
themselves. It doesn't have to be woo woo at all, because a
Right,
lot
right.
of women are not comfortable with
Yeah,
that. So whatever reflects you and
yeah.
will help you really feel, okay, I'm standing in this new place now,
Mhm.
living
Yeah.
here.
And I find in my work as a therapist, work predominantly with women and a lot of women in this menopausal transition. I find that a lot of them really need to tell their stories. That becomes
Absolutely.
vital
Yeah.
for their healing and their
Hmm.
being able to move forward. And yeah, that that it's so important to situate ourselves in the context in which we grew up and the mores and the values,
Hmm.
um, the family culture and the culture around us, our community, the larger world, all of that. Yeah, it seems. I also find that a lot of women, it's helpful for them to write down their
Yes,
stories,
yes.
to write, and then to have their children read them or other people, or to read them out loud to a group of women. There's all kinds of ways we can do that.
Yeah,
The
I
thing.
don't know about you, but I didn't know my own mother except as my mother. I did not know her
Oh
as a
yeah,
woman because she was a
yes.
private person.
Uh,
So,
I had
that
the
was
opposite.
something, yeah, that was something I swore I would not pass on to my daughter. So
Right,
I've made
right.
sure she knows me with all my warts and everything. And
That's courageous, I think. Yeah, to share your full self. No, I'm laughing about my mom because she's pretty much an open book, but it's she really works hard on herself and has always mirrored that, for me and my
mm,
sister.
that's
Um,
lovely.
yeah, and I think it's so important to know where you come from, who your people are, what they've been through. Um, I find that a lot of people are cut off where they actually don't know the full story of
Hmm.
their history. So the one thing, Susan, I've been dying to ask you this because
Hmm.
it just seems like so like right now I have so many women clients that are between the ages of 46 to 48, multiple women right now, and they are so angry. And when I was that age going through that
Hmm.
part of my journey, I was rageful. It wasn't just anger, it was blind fury, rage. And I'm just really want to know why you think women, why do we tend to get angry at this stage and what is the purpose of it? The biological, the emotional, spiritual purpose, and how can we harness it for transformation? So I believe in therapy that anger can be used as fuel, to push us forward. But
Hmm.
I'd love you to wax poetic on this.
Well, don't know if I'll be poetic, but there are many layers to that as well. One is hormonal. As I said, the estradiol, doormat hormones start to come down, and testosterone also rises. I mean, certainly we start out hormonally as latent creatures, then at puberty, we strongly polarize for the purposes of reproduction. And after the reproductive years are over, we kind of come back to the middle again. So men's estrogen rises, which is why you see more of the pot belly and the man boobs and all the things we love to joke about. And for the women, the testosterone rises. And so for some women, that means more, facial hair, different distribution of fat on the body, and that sort of thing. But testosterone is also associated with anger. So for some women that are sensitive to that, just the rise of testosterone kind of puts them on edge a bit. Also, in the perimenopausal years, our progesterone levels have dropped a lot. That's what's there to generally balance your estrogen. and that begins to drop sooner even than the estrogen does. And progesterone's a calming hormone. So when those levels start to drop, women find themselves being more irritable, not having the same amount of buffer zone. There's less estradiol to keep them, soft and happy, and there's less progesterone for buffer, and there's more testosterone. So hormonally, that's what's going on. And I think, I don't know how to say this. I think things also become more visible for women as the hormonal haze begins to clear, and we start to look around the world again and around ourselves and look at our lives and how much we have often given up for everyone around us and not taken that much for ourselves. And I think that fuels the anger as well, because it's just more visible to you than it was when you were in the hormonal haze. We
So we're
become
really
more.
hijacked by our hormones.
Oh, we're made
In a
into
sense.
different creatures literally by our
Yeah,
hormones. I mean, it
amazing.
seems trite to me to say it, but the caterpillar, the butterfly have exactly the same DNA. The difference is they go through the chrysalis where everything gets melted down into mush and a new being emerges that
Mhm,
looks different, acts different, has a different
mhm,
purpose, everything, but their DNA is exactly the same. And that's
mhm,
kind of a metaphor for me of what happens during menopause, too. Our basic DNA structure hasn't changed, our personality, so to speak, hasn't changed, but the hormonal changes because they run everything in our body. These hormonal changes literally change us into a different creature with, we're in that next phase with a different purpose, and we look different, and our intentions are different, and what we want out of life is different.
mhm,
So there's all of that. And I think what I think of as the weight of the undone in our lives also
mhm,
surfaces at this time. That can feel like a lot of pressure. I think it's very helpful to do a little timeline of your life. What had you hoped to accomplish by this
mhm,
point? Where did you want to be financially? Where did you want to be in your career if you have one? Did you want children? Do you have them? Because certain things are passing away. Women who even were very clear they didn't want children, grief comes up when you're going to lose your ability to have children.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and that's something to work through. And we as a culture do not know how to grieve. We don't have
mm,
space for grieving in our culture. So
yeah,
I think it's very important to claim that space in whatever way you need to grieve the things that are passing away for you, to celebrate the things that you can celebrate that are part
mhm,
of your life and that you've done, and then to create your intentions for the next phase so it can be guided by that.
mhm.
So all those things.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, I was just thinking how some of my younger female clients, I look at them and I think, okay, I love your skin. I remember when my skin was like that, but I also remember sleeping on a futon, and I'm not doing that now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, 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 and it just speaks again to, just I think there's a sanctity to every phase of our lives, for men as well. I wanted to mention, men go through andropause.
Yes,
That is
yes, they
serious.
do.
And I was going to say something funny. My husband and I have noticed at a certain point when we're just walking behind people, we notice that with some older couples, you can't tell if it's a heterosexual union, who the male is and who the female
Mhm.
is.
From
It's like,
behind, yeah.
yeah, our bodies kind of morph into sort of a
Mhm.
similar look. And yeah, I love that we're definitely on the same page with, this emotional unfinished business. But you called it, what did you call it? Weighted, so
The
brilliant.
weight of the undone,
Weight of the undone.
that's the way I think of it, but you bring up
Beautiful.
something that I think is very important to mention, and that's our partners. And however we're partnered, if we're partnered, I think it's so important to engage our partner in our process of what we're doing, because we're going through a lot of change that's going to make us different. We're going to want different things. We're going to demand different things. And, our partners need to be kept abreast of what's going
Mm.
on so that they don't take certain things personally, or so that they can
Oh,
be supportive of
yeah.
us, or so that they can share their stories. Because the
Mhm.
couples that thrive, a lot of couples divorce around menopause and midlife
Exactly.
because they can't change the paradigm they're working in, where the woman's there for everybody else and the man brings home the bacon and everybody has their
Mhm.
roles. If they're rigidly in those roles and don't have the flexibility to move with the changes that are happening, it breaks. But if you can really engage your partner, male, female, or otherwise, in the journey that you are a part of, then everybody gets to move together and everybody gets to grow and have their bubbles burst and get a little bigger and open up to
Yeah.
what the possibility is.
I am very, very blessed in that area. My husband and I have been
Mm.
together 26 years,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
luckily, honestly, I think so, a lot of it is luck. We have grown in the same ways at the same stages of life,
Mhm.
and thank goodness, this YouTube channel and podcast. This is my menopausal, you know, baby. This is what
Oh,
I'm giving to.
wonderful.
And
Mhm.
my husband does all the technical stuff, and he's
Mhm.
very involved. And um, yeah, I just thinking about just how funny that is. Where I just was, he calls it, I'm being critical, right? So I've been extra critical the last few days, and um, but I said to him the other day, I said, the thing is, I'm not being critical, I'm being precise. I'm telling the truth about what my experience is. But it's not anything to do with you. And you're not doing anything badly or right or wrong.
Mhm.
It's not about
Mhm.
that. I just, I said to him, I need to give voice to my truth in every
Yes.
area. And I said, and that I'm sure that can be upsetting for, it must be hard for him. But
Mm.
I said, if there's any way that you could do something to not take that personally, that might be great for both of us. And he took that to heart. It was incredible.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yesterday
because
I was,
that's a hallmark of
yeah,
menopausal women, telling your
yeah,
truth.
exactly. So yesterday, case in point, I know I was a bit critical. So I was also trying to be watchful, and I said, I'm sorry, that may come across in a harsh way or whatever. And I just noticed he just let it,
Mhm.
water off a duck's back. He just let it go, and he didn't take it personally, and it was wonderful. And we were
Yeah, that
able
is
to laugh.
wonderful.
And yeah, so you really have to work together as a couple.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of things that can shift and morph, and I think it's so important to, well, Tara Brach, do you know her work? She's a wonderful
I know
Buddhist.
of her, yes.
Yeah, I love her, and she does a lot with the rain meditation, um, and she talks about how emotions are like waves in the water, but and we just grab onto those waves and we're like jumping up and down, and it's exhausting.
Mhm.
She said we need to practice being the ocean, be the ocean that contains the waves.
Mhm.
And that way, you have to be a much bigger space. And I really feel that as a menopausal woman, that I can't even describe it in words, Susan, but I feel like I'm taking up more space. And I'm
Mhm.
like 5'1". I'm a little person, but I
Mhm.
feel expansive now. I feel solid. It's like, um, I've always had these pendants of goddesses. I'm not
Mhm.
wearing one today,
Mhm.
but I kind of, the ones that the big, solid women.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
kind of feel like that. It's almost like that is who I've become in my um, being, and it's so nice to not feel apologetic, and
Yes.
to speak your truth. Like in groups now, I'll just say what I think and feel, and I don't have that boomerang recoiling thing where, oh God, why did I say that? It's just, no, this is how I see it. And I believe them being made into a wise elder, that is
Mhm.
what is happening, and that I can hopefully mentor younger women, and help
Mhm.
them. Um,
Yeah,
and
there's really a sense of if not now, when? I mean, you get
exactly.
to this point in your life and you are becoming more aware of what your truth is and what you have to offer. And there's
Mhm.
just no upside to being small anymore.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, it's so true. Um, so yeah, oh, this is amazing. I was just thinking about this. I think we just went right here. So for me, the biggest healing has been finding my voice and using my voice
Hmm.
because I am a very quiet person and I am very introverted and highly sensitive. And I used to just stuff a lot of things down. I didn't give voice to things. And the most healing thing in my life right now is using my voice, like here, having a microphone literally and sharing
Hmm.
what I have to say and sharing other people's voices. So I'm curious what your take on this, the importance of using our voices at this time of life and also doing what we're passionate about, giving our gifts to the world. You've
Yeah.
spoken a little to that, but could you expand?
Hmm. Sure. I think that this is part of, as I said, what this time of life is about, of becoming more aware of who you are authentically as a person, inhabiting that, and being able to take that out in the world. And anthropologists have something they call the grandmother hypothesis that
Mm,
they really realized that once we started living long enough to become grandmothers, that's when the species started to evolve in a different way because the grandmothers had the time and the presence to gather more food. So there was more nourishment. They weren't taken up with one child after another and trying to gather food. So they did that. They were able to spend time with the younger children and give them more of a presence because prior to that, you would have one baby, and as soon as uh, you became pregnant again, that child had to kind of fend for themselves so you could give your attention to the one that
mm,
just came along. So the grandmothers also held the kind of more of the history and the stories of their clan, if you want, or their tribe, and they shared those. And all of those things help to wake up a whole different part of the human brain. And
mm,
so grandmothers are very important, and we still play a very important role, whether we're biologically grandmothers or not. And it does have to do with giving our gift, whatever that is, whatever we feel passionate about, and being present for younger children. I think so often about how we're one of the last generations that literally grew up without technology. I mean, they're handing babies screens now. And I can't tell you how often I'll be in a restaurant or an airport or whatever, and there's a toddler tugging on their mother trying to get her attention, and the mother is just riveted to the screen,
I
and it
see.
is a literal brain addiction, as I'm sure
Yeah.
so I think it's important to show people coming behind us, younger people, what it is to actually be present with someone.
Mm,
I mean, our job really is to follow them around when they explore the world and keep them
mm,
safe and help them connect to nature and see what's around. I mean, that's the biological program. But I had a lot of women say to me, you talk about what your gift is or your passion. I don't even have a clue anymore. I've
mm,
spent my life working as whatever or as a mother taking care of other people all the time. How do I even figure that out? And I say,
yeah.
well, think back to when you were 10 years old, because 10-year-old girls, before the hormones hit, and of course they're hitting earlier and earlier now,
Mm,
but before the hormones hit, they are so intelligent. They're so clear about who they are and what
mhm,
they can do. They feel
yeah.
powerful. I say, think back to when you're that age. What was it that really called to you? And that may
Mm,
not be the thing, but it there's probably a kernel in there somewhere or a clue as to what the thing is. And if you don't have that, I would just say on some level, follow your joy. Like what makes you
Mhm.
feel good? What draws you further to take the next step? Because I really believe as humans, we're meant to be joyful. We're not meant to
Yeah.
always be suffering and trudging. And, the lives that we live right now, we're very, very advantaged, most of us in the West. I mean, when you think about it, the horrors that are going on in the world right now just really throw me down sometimes. But try to be, if you show up and be present in your own life and are not casting your thoughts so far in the future or so far in the past that you're worried or anxious all the time, it starts to come in, if you're just
Mhm.
present, if you show up.
In
So
this moment.
sometimes even just taking a little space of time for yourself each day to, if it's a walk for you, go for a walk. If it's a bath for you, get in the tub. If it's writing for you, get out your journal. If it's being in the garden or painting, whatever it is that draws you forward, try to spend a little time, plug it in, make it one of your priorities.
Mhm.
And as you're present in that, it will come in, I think. And so I really believe our job going forward is to use our voices, give our gifts, share the wisdom we have. It'll be different for each person, but we've lost almost the ability to be with people who are different than us. I mean, especially the more time we spend online, we're sorted into groups of other people like us. We're fed news that is curated for us to reflect what they think we already believe and want to hear. We're made to feel like people who are different than us are somehow bad.
Yeah.
If you have, I mean, diversity becomes resource if we're all kind of facing in the same direction, trying to
Mhm.
look at an issue or a problem, then the more ways you have of looking at it, the better. But
Yeah.
that we're always pitted and polarized against each other. But you think about it. If somebody's house burns down in the neighborhood, you go out to help. You're not standing there asking them, "Who do you vote for? How do you
Right.
feel about abortion? Did you get a vaccine or not?" All the things they want to pit us against each other for. You're there together
Yeah.
helping your neighbor. So I
Yeah.
think we really need to cultivate that mindset that diversity is a good thing and see if we can find the places where we do intersect, because everybody, no matter how different their ideology is, and
Mhm.
that's what it's all about these days, is
Mhm.
ideology politics. Regardless of that, we're all human beings. We have basic human needs. We want our families to be safe. We want to be able to have enough food on the table for them. Basic human needs. We can all meet there
Yeah.
and start to begin to say, how do we make this world a place where everybody can live?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things you said that I agree with and feel so deeply about. And I think you spoke to what a lot of us are feeling and thinking and experiencing right now. Yeah. And, if you just think about menopause, the topic of today, every single woman, if she's lucky enough to make it to this stage of life, is going to pass through this, you
Hmm.
know, benchmark. And yeah. And if we can share together and grow together, yeah, I love that idea of I'd love people even to give feedback here on their experiences with menopause, the menopausal transition, what they learned from
Wonderful.
their mothers, their grandmothers,
Hmm.
their history, so that we can all, help each other um, through through this. I mean, it's just like a microcosm of the larger population. But I wanted to end this conversation, Susan. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm having so much fun. I think a lot of women, I'm hoping um, that they're thinking like me. There was a big part in your book about lifestyle adjustments.
Hmm.
I'm all about things that are straightforward and that we can do for ourselves, that don't cost a lot of money, that are simple, that are, and you spoke to our addiction to technology. And, I really believe that we really need to have sacrosanct times away from technology. And I urge people to do that a lot, like to have mindful moments each day where you are not on your phone and you're fully present in whatever you're doing, meditation, yoga, whatever it is. But yeah, in your book, what are some of the lifestyle adjustments and self-care strategy? I just love that piece of the book, that can help women navigate the second half of life in an empowering and peaceful way. And how can women who haven't quite crossed over to menopause, how can they be proactive in that realm of self-care and lifestyle?
Well, I would say that I've found that lifestyle seems to be the hardest thing for all of us to
Mm.
change because it's very deeply ingrained on many levels, so many of them even unconscious levels. And managing stress is kind of the cornerstone here. It's the base of the pyramid because literally we're made to survive. So our stress hormones are what help us survive. And nature is always going to prioritize survival over reproduction. So our hormones are fluid in our body. They're made so that one hormone can turn into a different one, depending on what the body needs at any given time, because we're adaptable, if nothing else. So if we're under stress, all of our hormone precursors go to making stress hormones, not sex hormones, because nature does not want you to be pregnant if you're under high levels of stress. It doesn't. So that's kind of a natural mechanism there. And so many women, and it is the adrenals that manage our stress, and the adrenals that are supposed to make our hormones after the ovaries begin to wind down. So many women arrive at the menopausal transition where the adrenals are supposed to take over and they're too tired to go.
That
The
was
ovaries
me.
are throwing them this ball and there's nothing there to catch it. And that's when things start to spiral down really quickly and symptoms become crazy. So if you can
Can you
put
just, sorry, but, do you mind just giving us a little list of some of those symptoms women should be looking out for?
Well, I wouldn't go looking for them, but a
Yeah,
lot of
okay.
the ones that we think of as
Or
PMS symptoms are the
yeah.
earliest parts: the irritability, the bloating, the weight gain, the sleeplessness, hair falling out, hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog. All
Mm,
of those are signs of high stress, as well as, signs that you would be seeing more at perimenopause and menopause if your body is not in balance enough to catch that ball. Okay.
right, right.
So the more you can do to manage your stress before you get to that point, the better you're going to be when the time comes. And that could be something as simple as when your PMS symptoms start getting bad. Um, Manage your stress, but you could also maybe take a little natural progesterone in the second half of your cycle to make up for some of what is going to making stress hormones, because there's only one molecule difference between progesterone and cortisol, the stress hormone. So that's what your body pulls on first. If it needs to make more stress hormones, it'll suck up your progesterone and change it.
Mm,
So to keep your estrogen progesterone in balance can be helpful. You'll have fewer symptoms, and then when the time comes, your adrenals aren't so tired from having done that conversion over and over and over again. And I've known many women to just sail right through menopause that have managed their stress, taken a little progesterone when it starts to drop, and have somebody they're working with that can help them to manage that. Um, for women who feel like it's way too much to take on lifestyle things, you don't have to change everything at once. Change one thing that you
mm.
think you can manage, and the ripple effect is huge. And then it makes all the others easier to do. But prioritize that little bit of time for yourself, prioritize your sleep, try to create a rhythm in your life so that your body knows roughly when you're going to wake up, when you're going to eat, when you're going to be more
Mm.
active, when you're going to go to sleep. Then it can have the right amount of energy for you at that time of day rather than having to be on high energy all the time because it never knows what's coming and wants to be prepared. Because
So
it
you're
is
saying
very
structure, routine is helpful?
rhythm, yeah, just
Rhythm, yeah.
a
Yeah.
rhythm. And because as we get older too, we do have less energy and you want to conserve it. It's like a bank account. If you
Right.
overspend, you're not going to have it when you really need to have it. So, and then I would say find movement you enjoy. We're so often, encourage, go to the gym, start exercising. And to most people, exercise means like heavy aerobic exercise or going to the gym. If you prefer going for a walk, do it. If you prefer being in the garden, do it. The thing you will do is the thing that's going to help you, not, because we can get into these endless loops of, okay, I'm going to start running again. And we scan Amazon and the catalogs and we get just the right pair of running clothes. And then we just have to get the right pair of running shoes. And then we have to decide where we're going to go and how, we spend a lot of time thinking we're working on the issue and doing it, but we haven't taken one step yet. So,
Yeah.
find something you enjoy doing and do it. So, wherever you are, you're on the path. There is no here to there. You're here, you take a baby step, you do
Yeah.
it, and then it becomes easier to
Well,
do
you
from
said
there
in
on
your
out.
book, along the lines of the exercise, that you don't want to do chronic cardio. That is not going to help the
Right.
cause. It's going to
No,
boost the
it'll work
cortisol.
against you at this
Yeah,
point. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Hmm.
and I was just learning that actually walking, there's been some studies recently that have shown that walking burns more fat and calories than running and um, cycling, and and
Right.
it was also about women, that women's bodies responded really well to walking. And we often
Hmm.
do that, but like walking is one of those things. I don't think you can really hurt yourself walking, maybe hiking, but just walking around your neighborhood is
No, it's good, and it
can't be
helps your
bad for you.
bones, and it helps
Right.
keep your muscles strong, and you wanna be careful of joints and things as you get older
Yes.
too, so the gentler things that you will do and can enjoy because there's so much that joy does in our body too, it changes our
Ooh.
chemistry completely,
Ooh,
so
talk about that.
it
Talk about
well, just if we enjoy what we're doing, it just changes the chemical balance in our bodies. So
Mhm. Mhm.
simple
Yeah.
as that.
I just recently joy was not something I used to focus on at all. It was not in the realm of my upbringing or consciousness for a very
Hmm.
long time. And I love yoga, so I do a lot of
Hmm.
yoga. And I
Hmm.
was doing this beautiful yoga video from YouTube. This woman, I love her. And it was a very yin yoga, very soft and
Hmm.
not easy, but very wonderful. And she had affirmations throughout the class.
Hmm.
And one of them, I literally had to stop the video because I was completely emotionally uh, charged by this. Joy is my birthright. That's what she said. And I had to stop it because I felt like I was choking or something. Joy is
Hmm.
my, and that is like my body mind had to let that settle into my consciousness. It was, and so I say that every day. I say that affirmation when I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed. Joy is my birthright. What a game changer.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, a
Joy.
lot of us were, as women, as females, were not brought up to feel that we had a right to
Yes.
joy,
Right.
that we're here to serve, we're here to
Yeah. Yeah.
do our duty, to do what we're supposed to do, but just to be in joy because we exist.
Right.
Mm, you
And just
know,
to be here now. I also meditate every day, twice a day, and I love mindfulness. I try to do mindful meditation and to practice being here in the moment. And that I find when I can really settle and be here. My favorite thing is to sit outside on my front porch in these really cozy chairs and just watch the animals and people going by
Mhm.
and listening to the sound of the wind and smelling, the air. And I live near the ocean, so I can smell the ocean. And
Lovely.
when I really let myself just fall into that, there is nothing that I enjoy more than that. It's such a rich
And you
experience.
feel the difference in your body, right? I mean, it
Amazing.
lifts mood, it takes away pain, it does so
Exactly.
much, clears your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is we have a fire pit in our backyard. We just got it
Mhm.
a couple years ago. We hadn't used it much. And my husband and I have just been sitting out there in the evenings, just, 15 minutes, a half an hour. Oh, and I said to him, I said, this is primal. This is probably what it
Mhm.
was like for our ancestors. They literally sat
Mhm.
around the fire. They probably cooked dinner in the fire, told stories around the fire, and then they went to
Right,
bed.
right. Very
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a big thing, like
Mhm.
but just that idea too of pausing, just taking a pause and just checking in. How do I feel? What am I thinking? What are the
Mhm.
sensations in my body? What can I do right now to nurture myself? Those
Mhm.
can be really, really
Mhm.
helpful. This
Yeah.
has been so wonderful, Susan. I'm so grateful you agreed to this interview.
Oh,
And
happy to be here.
yeah, and what I'm just curious, what are your next steps? What do you want to do, or what are you up to these days?
What I'm up to is I'm doing menopausal consultations, individual consultations. Again, I'm not managing care anymore or prescribing for people. But what I can do is provide what you no longer get in medical visits or that you didn't get to begin with, which is somebody that's really present with you to hear how you like to handle your health, to hear what's going on with you, to tailor, information to what you need to have and what you want to have, and then can give you strategies to help move along, can help put you in touch with providers and people that can help you if you need that locally. So that's one thing I'm doing. Middle of October, I'm going to be out in Boulder for
Mm.
Women's Wellness Week on a couple of panels there, doing a summit in January. I occasionally do workshops and love working with groups of women. So I always tell people if you have a group of, 5 to 7 people that you want to kind of work through this information more slowly with someone to help guide you a little bit, I do that. So,
Oh, that's
and I'm
amazing.
writing about early family formation and children and trying my hand at a little fiction, just a little
Oh,
bit
yeah,
of this, a little bit of that.
that's great. So is this all on your website or?
Yes, most of it is, yeah.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
have a newsletter that I send out, and I have a blog on the
Oh,
website. There are probably about 20 old blogs that people can read if they're interested, and I post new ones, and there are a lot of podcasts there as well. So, we can put this up there so people can find it. Um,
yeah. It'll
so
all be
yeah,
in
a
the
lot of that's on there.
excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the
Sure.
work that you do.
Yeah, I
It's a huge
enjoy it.
contribution.
I love working with women. I always have, and it's
Yeah.
just nourished me so much in my life. So
Wonderful.
I'd say, don't buy into the story that menopause is a horror. It can really be the best time of your life. So
Yes.
make it
Yes.
so.